The morning my biggest order ever walked into my tiny bakery, my phone lit up with a message from my mother. "You still playing pretend with that little shop?" Why did a man in a tailored suit already know my name before I introduced myself?
Good
Why
morning,
did he
Daniel.
glance around like he'd been
Welcome
here
to the
before
bakery.
when I'd never
Thank you,
seen
Stella.
him?
It smells
And
wonderful.
why did my stomach drop
If you
the
just sign
moment
these
he
papers,
said,
we can
"Your
clear this
family's been
debt
busy"?
completely.
Then he
It's the
placed
best
a
option
sealed
for everyone
envelope on my
involved, believe me.
counter. Inside were copies of canceled orders I never received, and a name I knew too well. I looked up at him, my hands already shaking. "You might want to read all of it," he said quietly, "before you decide who to trust. If you're listening from somewhere else, tell me where you are and what time it is there." I read every comment. And if you've ever had family doubt you before you even started, you'll understand why I couldn't walk away from that envelope. 3 years ago, I signed the lease for my bakery with a pen I could barely hold steady. Not because I was unsure, but because I knew exactly what it would cost me. "Stella, you're throwing away a perfectly good career," my mother, Elaine Hill, had said the night before, standing in my apartment with her arms crossed like she was delivering a verdict. "People don't leave accounting jobs to bake cupcakes. That's not a business. That's a hobby." I remember smiling the kind you give when you're already too deep into your decision to turn back. It's not cupcakes, it's artisan pastry. And I've been planning this for 2 years. She didn't even respond to that. Just shook her head and said, "Don't expect us to clean up the mess." My younger brother Ryan was leaning against the kitchen counter at the time, scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up when he said, "You could have just invested that money. You know something real." That was the tone from the start. Not anger, not even concern, just quiet dismissal wrapped in this idea that they knew better. The only person who didn't talk to me like I was making a mistake was Jasmine. She showed up the day I got the keys with 2 iced coffees and a roll of blue painter's tape. "We're mapping out your dream right," she said, already walking inside like it belonged to both of us. That first week, the bakery smelled like fresh paint and vanilla extract. I worked 12-hour days, sometimes more, figuring out the ovens, testing recipes, building the menu from scratch. I made spreadsheets at night, costs, margins, projections, trying to make sure this wasn't just passion, but something sustainable. I wasn't naive. I knew small businesses failed all the time. That's exactly why I planned everything. But planning doesn't prepare you for silence. The first month we barely broke even. The second month was worse. Foot traffic was inconsistent and online orders were almost non-existent. I told myself it was normal. It takes time to build something. Then Ryan showed up one afternoon holding a coffee like he was doing me a favor just by being there. "I've been thinking," he said, looking around the shop like he was evaluating a property. "Your problem isn't the product. It's visibility." I wiped my hands on my apron. "I know that. I'm working on it." "No, I mean, professionally," he continued. "I know people. I can help you set up proper digital marketing, paid ads, SEO, maybe partnerships, but it's not free." I hesitated. "How much?" "10,000 to start. I'll handle everything." 10,000 was a lot, especially then, but it was also everything I had left after build-out costs. "You're sure it'll help?" I asked. He gave me this look like I was the one being unreasonable. "Stella, I'm trying to help you. You either trust me or you don't." That sentence stayed with me longer than it should have. So I trusted him. I wired the money that night. For the next few weeks, Ryan sent me occasional updates. Screenshots of ad dashboards, vague messages about traffic growth, and once a list of influencers he claimed were reviewing my products, but I didn't see the results. Orders didn't increase. In fact, some days felt even slower. When I asked him about it, he always had an answer. It takes time. The algorithm's adjusting. You need to be patient. And I wanted to believe that, because the alternative that I had made a mistake trusting my own brother felt worse. Meanwhile, my mom kept checking in, but never about how I was doing. "How's the experiment going?" she'd ask over the phone. "It's not an experiment," I said once. She paused just long enough to make it clear she disagreed. "Just don't come back asking for money when it doesn't work out." I stopped calling as often after that. By month 4, I started cutting costs, fewer ingredients, shorter hours. I let go of the part-time help I'd hired for weekends. Jasmine picked up shifts for free when she could, even though she had her own job. "You're not failing," she told me one night as we were closing up. "You're just early." I wanted to believe her. I really did. Then one afternoon while I was reorganizing my inbox, I noticed something odd. There was a gap. Not in dates, but in confirmations. I had records of small orders, walk-ins, a few custom cakes. But there should have been more. I knew there should have been more. I remembered conversations, calls, inquiries, people asking about large catering orders, but I couldn't find the emails. At first I thought maybe I deleted them by accident or misfiled them. So I searched. Nothing. Then I checked my spam folder. Promotions? Trash. Still nothing. That's when I logged into the back end of my website, the part Ryan had helped optimize. There, buried under a tab I didn't recognize, was a secondary inbox. And inside it were messages. Dozens of them. Large orders. Corporate events. Wedding inquiries. Requests I had never seen, never responded to. Each one marked as closed or canceled. My chest tightened as I clicked through them. Some of them had notes attached. Client notified, no availability. Order declined per request. Per whose request? My hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from something colder. Because I knew one thing for certain. I had never written those responses. And as I scrolled further down, I found an access log timestamps IP addresses login sessions. One of them matched a familiar network. My parents' house. I sat there staring at the screen, trying to make it make sense. Trying to come up with any explanation that didn't involve the one thought I couldn't ignore. Then my phone buzzed. It was Ryan. "Hey," he said casually when I answered. "Just checking in." "How's business?" I looked at the screen again, the canceled orders, the hidden inbox, the IP address. And for the first time, I didn't answer right away. Because I realized this wasn't just bad luck. I didn't answer Ryan right away. There was a long enough pause on the line that he noticed. "You still there?" he asked. Same casual tone. Same easy confidence. I leaned back against the counter, staring at the screen like it might rearrange itself into something less ugly. "Yeah, I'm here. Everything okay?" I could hear it now. Not concern, monitoring. I was just going through the site backend, I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Cleaning things up." "Uh-huh." Another pause. Shorter this time. "Controlled." "You didn't need to do that," he added. "That's what I've been handling." I let that sit for a second. "Yeah, I noticed." He didn't respond immediately. That was new. Ryan always had something ready, some explanation, some deflection. "What's that supposed to mean?" I clicked into one of the emails again. A catering request from a law firm downtown. 200 guests. Date from 6 months ago. "Do you remember a client called Weston and Burke?" I asked. Silence. Then, "Doesn't ring a bell. They requested a catering quote. Corporate event." "I get a lot of emails, Stella. Hard to keep track of everything." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so carefully vague. I never saw it. I said, but somehow it was marked as declined. That's probably a system thing. Yeah, I scrolled further, because there are about 30 of these. This time the silence stretched long enough to feel intentional. Then he sighed. Look, if something slipped through, that's unfortunate. But that's exactly why I told you to let me manage it. You don't have the infrastructure to handle large clients anyway. There it was. Not denial. Reframing. You told them we didn't have availability, I said quietly. No. He stopped himself, then shifted. Stella, I was trying to protect you. Protect me. From what success I didn't ask you to do that. You didn't have to. I could see where this was going. You were already struggling with small orders. Imagine what would have happened if you took on something that size and failed. That would have been worse for you and for the family. The family. It always came back to that. I looked around my shop, the counters I cleaned myself, the recipes I tested until midnight, the rent I barely made some months, and tried to understand how any of that translated into something that needed to be controlled. You made that decision for me, I said. I made a responsible call, he corrected. You're too close to this. You can't see it objectively. I closed my eyes for a second. Not to calm down, but to keep my voice steady. How many? What? How many orders did you cancel? It's not about numbers. How many? Ryan? Another pause, then softer this time, almost like he was trying to guide me back into something safer. You're focusing on the wrong thing. The bakery wasn't ready. You weren't ready. I opened my eyes again and looked at the screen. 32 canceled inquiries. Maybe more I hadn't found yet. And the money I asked. What money? The $10,000 I gave you. A beat. That went into marketing. Show me. It's not that simple. Then make it simple. His tone shifted again, just slightly sharper. You're acting like I did something wrong. I didn't respond, because if I did, I knew exactly what I'd say, and I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. Instead, I said, I'm coming by tonight. No, you don't need to. I'll be there at 7. I hung up before he could answer. For a few seconds, the bakery was completely silent. No ovens, no customers, just the faint hum of the refrigerator behind me. I went back to the dashboard and pulled up the access logs again. Multiple logins over months. Same IP range, same pattern, late nights, early mornings. Times I knew I wasn't working. This wasn't a one-time decision. It was a system. I exported everything emails, timestamps, IP, logs into a folder on my laptop. Not because I fully understood what I'd do with it yet, just because something in me knew I'd need it. By the time I closed the shop early that day, my hands had stopped shaking. Not because I felt better, because something had settled. The drive to my parents' house felt longer than usual, even though it wasn't. Same streets, same turns, same quiet neighborhood where everything looked controlled and intentional. When I walked in, my mom was in the kitchen setting the table like it was any normal evening. You're early, she said, not looking surprised. Ryan was already there, sitting at the counter scrolling through his phone again. Of course he was. You told her I asked him. He shrugged. I said you might stop by. My mom finally looked at me. What's going on? I didn't answer right away. I just walked over, pulled out my laptop, and set it down on the table between us. Can you explain this? I asked. I opened the folder. Emails, logs, notes. Ryan leaned forward first. His expression didn't change much, but I saw it. That split-second calculation. My mom stepped closer, reading over my shoulder. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then she exhaled slowly, like she was preparing to explain something simple to someone who just didn't understand. "Stella," she said, "this looks worse than it is." Worse than it is? I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time, I wasn't trying to convince her I was right. I was waiting to see how far she'd go. "What exactly is it then?" I asked. She glanced at Ryan, then back at me. "We were helping you," she said. The word helping landed heavier than anything else she could have said. Because now it wasn't just him. It was both of them. And suddenly the problem wasn't just a hidden inbox or a few canceled orders. It was something much bigger. I slowly closed the laptop. "Then we need to talk about what help actually means," I said. My mom's expression didn't change, but Ryan shifted in his seat, and in that moment I realized something I hadn't been ready to admit before. This wasn't going to be a quick conversation, because whatever they thought they were doing, they believed they were right. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just reopened the laptop and turned the screen toward them. "Walk me through it," I said. My mom, Elaine, folded her arms, not defensive, just composed in that way she always was when she believed she had the moral high ground. Ryan stayed quiet, but his legs started bouncing under the counter. "You were overwhelmed," she began. "You didn't have the staff, the systems, or the experience to handle large clients. One bad event could have destroyed your reputation before you even had a chance to build one. So you decided to cancel them," I said. "We redirected them," she corrected. That word again, clean, polished. To wear another glance between them. Quick, almost practiced. Ryan spoke this time. "To a partner company." I felt something tighten in my chest. "What partner company?" "It's a logistics and catering network I've worked with before," he said. "They were better equipped." I turned the screen back to me and clicked into one of the documents Daniel had given me. A company name sat at the bottom of several canceled orders. Brightline Event Logistics. I said it out loud. Ryan's leg stopped bouncing. "That's the one," he said carefully. "And you just handed them my clients." "They weren't your clients yet," he said. "They were inquiries, and we made sure they were taken care of. I looked at my mom. "You knew about this." She didn't hesitate. "Of course I did." There was no shame in her voice, no hesitation, just certainty. "We weren't going to let you fail publicly," she continued. "Not when there were better ways to handle it. By cutting me out of my own business, by protecting you," she said again. I stared at her, trying to reconcile the word with the reality sitting in front of me. "Did you tell them it was my bakery?" I asked Ryan. He hesitated. "Did you?" "No," he admitted. "We positioned it differently." "Differently how?" "Like the request came through our network," which technically it did. My hands were steady now. Too steady. "So they paid your company," I said. "They paid Brightline," he corrected. "And you have a relationship with Brightline." "Yes." I nodded slowly, letting the pieces settle into place. "Did you get a cut?" Silence. I didn't need him to answer. My mom stepped in. "That's not the point. It is the point," I said quietly, because suddenly this wasn't just about control or image. It was about money. "How much?" I asked Ryan. He leaned back, exhaling like I was making this harder than it needed to be. It was standard referral commission. Nothing unusual. "How much?" 10%. I did the math without meaning to. Some of those orders were worth thousands, and there were dozens of them. You made money off my clients, I said. We made sure those clients had a good experience, my mom said, which reflects well on you in the long run. No, I said, shaking my head. It reflects on them. My name wasn't even attached. That's temporary, she insisted. Once you were ready. When was that supposed to be? Neither of them answered, because there was no plan for that. This wasn't a bridge. It was a wall. I closed the laptop again slower this time. Not because I was done, but because I understood something now that I hadn't before. They didn't see me as the owner of my business. They saw me as a risk to be managed. I want access to everything I said. Ryan frowned. What do you mean, your accounts? Your agreements with Brightline? Every transaction connected to those orders? That's not how this works, he said immediately. It is if my business is involved. It's not your business once it leaves your system. I looked at him. Really looked. You took it out of my system, I said. My mom stepped forward, her tone tightening just slightly. Stella, you're escalating this unnecessarily. No, I said. I'm finally understanding it. There was a difference, and I think deep down she heard it too, because for the first time she didn't have a quick response ready. I'm asking once I said keeping my voice even. Give me the records. Ryan shook his head. I can't do that. Can't or won't. It's not just about you, he said. There are other parties involved. Contracts. Confidentiality? Then you should have thought about that before you used my business as a funnel. The word hung there. Funnel. It fit too well. My mom's expression shifted not to guilt, but to something closer to concern. Not for me, for the situation. You're talking like this is adversarial, she said. Isn't it? We're your family, and this is my livelihood. That landed, not loudly, but clearly. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Ryan stood up, pushing his chair back just enough to break the stillness. What are you going to do? He asked. It wasn't a challenge. It was a calculation. I thought about that envelope on my counter, about Daniel, about the documents I hadn't even finished reading yet. I'm going to figure out exactly what happened, I said. All of it. And then I met his eyes. Then I'll decide what to do with it. My mom opened her mouth like she was about to say something, probably something about perspective or family or long-term thinking. But I didn't give her the chance. I picked up my laptop, turned, and walked out before she could finish the sentence forming on her lips. The drive back felt different this time. Not longer, just clearer. By the time I got to the bakery, the lights were still off. The place smelled faintly of sugar and flour like it always did after a long day. I set my laptop down on the counter and pulled the envelope back out. There were still documents I hadn't looked at. More names, more dates, more connections I didn't fully understand yet. And at the very bottom there was a business card I hadn't noticed before. Daniel Brooks. Under his name in smaller print was a company I recognized but couldn't immediately place. Brooks Hospitality Group. I stared at it for a long moment, trying to remember where I'd seen it before. Then it hit me. One of the largest regional hospitality networks in Southern California. Hotels, event venues, corporate catering contracts. The kind of clients I'd been trying and failing to reach for years. My fingers tightened around the card. Because if someone like him had been watching my bakery, then this was never just about a few lost orders. It meant something much bigger had been sitting just out of reach the entire time. And somehow, my own family had been standing in front of it. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because everything had finally lined up in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. The envelope sat open on my kitchen table. Papers spread out. Names, timestamps, partial contracts, and Daniel Brooks' card placed carefully at the center like it belonged there. By morning, I wasn't asking whether something was wrong. I was asking how far it went. Jasmine came by before opening, still in her work scrubs, hair tied back like she hadn't planned on staying long. She took one look at my face and set her bag down without saying anything. "You found more," she said. "I found enough to know I don't have the full picture," I replied. I slid the documents toward her. She read quietly, her brow tightening as she moved from one page to the next. "They rerouted your orders," she said slowly, "through a third-party company tied to your brother, and probably profited off it." 10%, I said. "At least." She exhaled. "That's not small money." "No." We sat there for a moment in the quiet, the reality settling in again. But this time, it didn't feel like a shock. It felt like direction. "I'm not guessing anymore," I said. "I need someone who can tell me exactly what this is." Jasmine nodded. "A lawyer." "I already have a name." By 10:30, I was sitting across from Ethan Reed in an office that smelled faintly of coffee and polished wood. He wasn't much older than me, but there was a steadiness in the way he listened that made me feel like I didn't need to explain everything twice. I laid the documents out in front of him. No dramatics, just facts. He didn't interrupt, just read, took notes, asked for clarification only when something didn't line up. When he finally leaned back, his expression wasn't surprised. It was measured. "This is more structured than I expected," he said. Meaning it doesn't look like a one-time interference. It looks like an ongoing system." I nodded. That's what it felt like. He tapped one of the pages, the Brightline references. "If your brother had access to your back end and used it to intercept and redirect business inquiries without your knowledge, that raises several issues." "Like what?" "Interference with prospective economic advantage," he said. "It's a legal way of saying someone intentionally disrupted your ability to secure business." I let that settle. "And the money I asked, if he profited from those diverted opportunities, especially using your business as the source that could also involve unjust enrichment, possibly even fraud depending on how it was represented to the clients." Fraud. The word didn't feel dramatic. It felt precise. "And my mom," Ethan paused for a second, not hesitating, just choosing his words carefully. "If she directed or knowingly participated in the behavior, she could be implicated as well." I looked down at the table, not because I didn't expect that, but because hearing it out loud made it harder to keep things separated in my head. Family on one side, facts on the other. "They said they were protecting me," I said. Ethan gave a small, almost neutral nod. "Intent matters in some cases, but in business law, actions matter more, especially when there's financial impact." I let out a slow breath. "What do I need?" "Complete documentation," he said immediately. "Not just what you have. We need access logs, financial records, communications, anything that shows a pattern. They won't give that to me. Then we find other ways." I looked up. "Like what?" He slid one of the documents back toward me, the Brightline reference. "This company is key," he said. "If we can establish a direct link between your inquiries and their contracts, we can start tracing revenue. And if we can trace it, then you have leverage." That word landed differently than anything else he'd said. Not revenge, not confrontation. Leverage. "I don't want this to turn into a war," I said quietly. "It doesn't have to," he replied. but you need to be prepared for the possibility that they won't cooperate. I thought about my mom's face the night before, the calm certainty, the way she said we were helping you like it was the only version of the truth that mattered. They won't, I said. Ethan nodded once. Then we build your position before you show your hand. I gathered the papers slowly, more deliberate now. What about the contract, I asked. The one Daniel offered. Ethan looked at me. That depends. Do you trust him? I hesitated. I trust that he did his homework, I said. That's a start, Ethan replied. But before you sign anything, we review it. Make sure there are no terms that tie you into something you can't control. Control. That word again. But this time, it didn't feel like something being taken from me. It felt like something I could build. I'll send it to you, I said. Good. By the time I left his office, I wasn't lighter. But I was clearer. There was a structure to this now. Steps, priorities, no guessing, no reacting. Just building something solid enough that when I finally stood in front of my family again, it wouldn't be about emotions. It would be about facts. That afternoon back at the bakery, I called Daniel. He picked up on the second ring. Stella, he said, like he'd been expecting it. I've started reviewing the documents I said, and I've spoken to legal counsel. A brief pause. Then, good. I have questions. I assumed you would. I took a breath. How long have you known about this? Long enough, he said, but not long enough to act without your involvement. What does that mean? It means I could have taken my business elsewhere quietly, he said. But that wouldn't have solved your problem. It would have just avoided it. I leaned against the counter, staring at the display case in front of me. So why come to me now? Because you finally saw it, he said simply. That answer settled deeper than I expected. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was true. And the contract, I asked. It's real, he said. And it's substantial. But it's also a test. A test of whether you run your business or someone else does. I closed my eyes for a second. I'll have my lawyer review it, I said. I'd expect nothing less. We ended the call shortly after that. No pressure, no urgency, just an understanding that this wasn't something to rush. I set my phone down and looked around the bakery again. Same walls, same ovens, same quiet hum. But something had shifted. Not outside, inside me. I wasn't trying to prove them wrong anymore. I was trying to understand exactly how they had positioned themselves inside something that was supposed to be mine. And more importantly, how to remove them from it completely. That's when I remembered something Ethan said. We need to trace the revenue. I opened my laptop again and pulled up the Brightline name. Not just the references in my documents, but everything public I could find. Company structure, partnerships, client lists. And then I saw it. A familiar name buried in a regional vendor listing. Hill Consulting Group. My family's business. My fingers hovered over the trackpad, not moving, because if that connection was real, then this wasn't just interference. It was integration. I didn't click anything else for a full minute. Hill Consulting Group sat there on the screen like it had always belonged, clean font, neutral colors, listed as a regional vendor liaison under Brightline's extended network. My family's business wasn't just connected, it was positioned inside the system. I finally clicked. The page expanded into a profile, service descriptions, contract regions, referral structure. It was all written in the kind of language that sounded harmless unless you knew what to look for. client acquisition support, vendor alignment, revenue channel optimization. I leaned closer. This wasn't random. It was organized. And then I saw the detail that made everything lock into place. Commission structure tiered, not a flat 10% like Ryan told me. It increased based on volume, which meant the more business they redirected, the more they made. I sat back slowly, letting that sink in. It explained the consistency, the timing, the persistence. This wasn't about protecting me from one bad order. It was about maintaining a revenue stream, and I had been the source. My phone buzzed on the counter, pulling me out of the spiral. Jasmine. "Hey," I answered. "You sound like you haven't slept," she said immediately. "I found something," I replied. I explained it in pieces. Brightline, Hill Consulting, the vendor listing, the commission tiers. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, there was a pause on her end. "That's not accidental," she said finally. "No, that's a system." "I know, and your mom knew." I looked back at the screen, at the polished description of a structure that had quietly fed off my work. She didn't just know, I said. She helped design it. Saying it out loud didn't hurt the way I expected. It clarified things. Jasmine exhaled. "Okay. So what's the next move? I'm not confronting them again," I said. "Not yet." "Good. I need to understand how deep this goes. Contracts, payments, everything." "That's lawyer territory. I'm seeing Ethan this afternoon." "Good," she said again, softer this time. "Just don't carry this alone." "Okay, I'm not," I said, and for the first time since this started, that felt true. Ethan didn't look surprised when I showed him the vendor listing. He leaned forward, studying the screen with the same measured focus he always had. "Integration," he said after a moment. "That's the word I was thinking of." He nodded. "Your family didn't just interfere with your business. They built a structure around it." I sat across from him, hands folded, trying to keep everything in order. "What does that change?" I asked. "It changes the scale," he said. "And your leverage." I waited. If Hill Consulting Group has a formal relationship with Brightline, and they used access to your business to generate referrals without disclosure, we're not just talking about interference anymore. What are we talking about? Potential breach of fiduciary duty, misrepresentation, and possibly conversion of business opportunities. He said it calmly. No dramatics. Just facts. I nodded slowly. And the commissions. If we can trace payments tied to those redirected orders, that strengthens everything. How do we trace them? We request records, he said. And if they don't cooperate... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I looked down at my hands. They weren't shaking. "Will this go to court?" I asked. "It might," he said. "But often cases like this settle before that, especially if the evidence is strong." I thought about my mom again, about the way she held herself controlled, composed, convinced she was right. "She won't see it as wrongdoing," I said. "She doesn't have to." Ethan replied, "The law will." There was no comfort in that, but there was clarity. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Everything you've already gathered," he said, "and the contract Daniel offered. I want to review it before you sign anything. I sent it this morning." "Good." He pulled a notepad closer and started outlining steps. "First, we secure your systems. Change all access credentials. Remove any external permissions your brother may still have." "I already started that," I said. "Good." Second, we document the pattern timeline communication's financial impact. Third, we prepare a formal request for records from Hill Consulting and Brightline. And if they refuse, then we escalate. The words sat there between us. Not aggressive, just inevitable. I took a breath. I don't want to destroy them. Ethan looked at me for a moment. Not judging, just assessing. You're not responsible for what they chose to do, he said. You're responsible for how you respond to it. I nodded. That felt like the line I needed. Back at the bakery, the afternoon light came in through the front window, soft and steady. The kind of light that made everything look normal. But nothing about this was normal anymore. I logged into my system and started locking everything down. New passwords. 2-factor authentication. Access logs cleared and archived. It wasn't dramatic work. Just quiet, methodical steps. Each one felt like reclaiming something. When I finished, I sat for a moment staring at the dashboard. No hidden inbox. No unauthorized access. Just my business. The way it should have been from the start. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Daniel. I answered. Hi, I reviewed your email, he said. Your lawyer sounds thorough. He is. Good. A brief pause. Have you decided about the contract, he asked. Not yet, I said. I want to understand everything before I commit to anything. Fair. I hesitated, then asked the question that had been sitting in the back of my mind since yesterday. Did you know about Hill Consulting's involvement? Another pause. Longer this time. Yes, he said finally. I closed my eyes for a second. And you didn't say anything. It wasn't my place, he replied. Not until you saw it for yourself. That answer should have frustrated me, but it didn't. Because if he had told me earlier, I might not have believed him. Why are you still interested? I asked. After all this? Because your product is strong, he said. And now I know the only thing holding it back wasn't you. I leaned against the counter, letting that settle. And the test, I asked. The contract. Yeah, it's still a test, he said. But not the way you think. How then, to see whether you build something that depends on people who undermine you, or something that stands without them? I didn't respond right away, because the answer to that wasn't something I could say. It was something I had to do. We ended the call shortly after that. I set my phone down and looked around the bakery again. Same place, same space. But this time, there was no confusion about what I was standing in. This wasn't just a business anymore. It was a boundary, and for the first time, I was ready to defend it. The first time my mother called after the contract started paying off, she didn't mention the past. Stella Elaine said, her voice warmer than I'd heard in years. I've been hearing good things. Of course she had. The new contract with Brooks Hospitality Group hadn't just stabilized my bakery, it changed the rhythm of everything. We weren't guessing about demand anymore. We were planning around it. Weekly corporate orders, event tastings, standing contracts that actually showed up in my inbox because now they couldn't disappear. I'm busy, Mom, I said. Not cold, just honest. That's good, she replied quickly. Busy is good. A pause. We should have dinner. Catch up properly. We. Not you. Not I. We. I'll check my schedule, I said, already knowing I wasn't committing to anything. Bring some samples, she added, like it was an afterthought. Your brother's been telling people how much you've improved. I almost smiled at that. Improved. As if this version of my business had appeared out of nowhere. I'll let you know, I said, and ended the call before she could reshape the conversation into something more comfortable for her. By the end of that month, I had 3 new hires, a production schedule that finally made sense, and a spreadsheet that didn't make my chest tighten every time I opened it. Growth. When it's real, feels different. It's quieter than people expect, less dramatic, more consistent. But it also attracts attention. Ryan showed up on a Thursday afternoon just after we finished packaging a large corporate order. He walked in like nothing had changed, same posture, same casual confidence, same way of scanning the space like he was evaluating it. "Looks different," he said, nodding toward the prep area. "It is." He stepped closer to the counter. "I heard you landed something big." "I did. With Brooks Wright." That caught my attention. Not because he knew, but because of how easily he said it. "Who told you that I asked?" He shrugged. "People talk. People. Or networks." "Congratulations," he added. "Seriously? Thank you." There was a beat where neither of us moved. Then he leaned his elbows on the counter, lowering his voice just slightly. "You know, this is exactly what I was trying to set you up for," he said. I didn't react. If you had taken those early contracts and failed, you wouldn't be here right now. "This?" He gestured around the bakery. "This only works because you grew into it." I studied his face, looking for something regret, maybe, or even awareness. But all I saw was consistency. He believed what he was saying. "That's one way to look at it," I said. "It's the accurate way," he replied. "And now that you're here, it might be time to think bigger." There it was. "What do you mean?" "Scaling," he said. "Multiple locations. Distribution. You've got momentum now, but momentum fades if you don't structure it right." "I have structure," I said. "Not at the level you're heading toward." I let that sit for a second. "And you can help with that?" I asked. He smiled slightly. "That's what I do." I almost admired the timing. Not the intention, but the precision. "You want to invest," I said. "I want to partner," he corrected. "There's a difference." "What kind of partnership?" "Equity," he said like it was the most natural word in the world. "Strategic control over expansion. Access to vendor networks. Capital flow. Operational oversight." "Operational oversight," I repeated. He paused. "Just for a fraction of a second. Support," he amended. I nodded slowly. "And Hill Consulting would be involved." He didn't answer immediately. "That depends on how we structure it," he said finally. Which was an answer, just not the one he thought it was. "I've already structured it," I said. He frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean my business isn't available for outside control." "It's not about control, it is," I said, still calm. "It was before and it is now." His expression shifted, not angry, just tighter, more focused. "You're looking at this the wrong way," he said. "We're offering you resources, access, protection." There it was again. Protection. I leaned forward slightly, resting my hands on the counter. "I don't need protection from my own growth," I said. "You needed it before," he replied. "No," I said. "You decided I did." That landed differently this time, because now it wasn't just a disagreement, it was a boundary. Ryan straightened his tone, sharpening just enough to show what was underneath. "You're letting one contract make you overconfident," he said. "I'm letting evidence guide my decisions," I replied. He held my gaze for a moment like he was recalculating something. Then he nodded once. "All right," he said. "But just so you know, this level, it comes with pressure. Expectations. You might not have the infrastructure to sustain it long term." I didn't argue with that, because he wasn't entirely wrong, but being right about a risk didn't give him the right to control the outcome.
"I'll handle that," I said.
He pushed off the counter, stepping back. "Think about it," he added, "because opportunities like this don't stay open forever." I almost smiled again. "They didn't before either," I said. That stopped him. Not for long, but long enough. Then he turned and walked out the door, closing behind him with a soft click that felt louder than it should have. That night, I sat in the office behind the bakery reviewing numbers. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to see them clearly. Revenue streams, cost structures, growth projections, not guesses, not assumptions, data. And buried in that data was something I hadn't fully appreciated until now. Patterns. Orders that never came through before were now consistent. Clients who had once disappeared were returning this time directly, because there was no one intercepting them, no hidden layer, no quiet redirection, just a straight line between my work and the result. My phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. I reviewed the contract. "We need to talk." I stared at the screen for a second, then called him. He picked up immediately.
"What did you find?" I asked.
"It's solid," he said. "But there's something you need to understand before you sign."
"Okay, this isn't just a supply contract," he continued. "It includes exclusivity clauses. If you accept, you'll be tied to Brooks Hospitality Group for all large-scale operations." I leaned back in my chair. "Is that a problem?" "Not necessarily," he said. "But it means your growth path will be shaped by their network, not yours alone." I thought about Ryan's offer earlier that day, about control, structure, oversight, different words, same idea. "And Daniel," I asked, "where does he stand in this?" "He's not just a client," Ethan said. "He's positioning himself as a gatekeeper to a larger market." I let that sink in. "So either way..." "You're choosing a structure," Ethan finished. I looked down at the numbers again, at everything I'd built slowly, carefully, without shortcuts. And I realized something I hadn't been ready to admit before. This next decision was just as important as uncovering what my family had done, because this time no one was hiding anything. The terms were right in front of me, clear, structured, binding. And for the first time, the risk wasn't being taken from me. It was being offered to me. My mother insisted on hosting the meeting at her house. Neutral ground, she called it, over the phone. There was nothing neutral about that house. Every room held a version of me that had learned to stay quiet, to explain less, to accept decisions already made for me. This time I walked in with a folder in my hand. Not notes, not reminders. Evidence. Elaine was already seated at the dining table when I arrived, posture perfect, a glass of water placed exactly where it always was. Ryan sat to her right, laptop open like he was about to present something, and at the far end, Ethan. He stood when I walked in, giving me a brief nod. Not protective, not performative, just present. "Thank you for coming," my mother said. I didn't answer that. I took my seat, set the folder down, and looked at both of them. "Let's keep this simple," I said. Ryan gave a small, polite smile. That would be ideal. For a moment, no one moved. Then he turned his laptop toward me. "We've put together a proposal," he said. "A structured partnership. Growth capital, vendor access, operational support." "I'm not here for a proposal," I said. His smile didn't disappear, but it stopped reaching his eyes. "This is relevant to your future," he replied. "So is this." I opened the folder. Printed emails, access logs, transaction summaries, the Brightline vendor listing, Hill Consulting's profile. Everything laid out in a clean, linear sequence.
No emotion, just facts. Ryan's posture shifted first. Subtle, but enough. My mother didn't touch the papers. She just looked at them, then back at me. "You've been busy," she said.
"I've been thorough,"
I corrected. Ethan didn't speak. He didn't need to. "What exactly is your goal here, Stella?" my mother asked. Not denial, not confusion. Control of the frame. "My goal," I said evenly, "is to clarify what happened. We already explained that," Ryan said. "You explained your version," I replied. "This is the full version." I slid one page forward, the commission structure from Brightline. "Tiered commissions," I said, "increasing with volume." Ryan didn't touch it. My mother glanced at it briefly, then back at me. "That's standard," she said. "For a vendor network," I agreed. "Not for redirecting business from a company you don't own." "That's an interpretation," Ryan said. "It's a pattern," I replied. I moved to the next page. 32 canceled inquiries, all marked client notified, all routed through a system you had access to. "You don't know that for certain," he said. I tapped the access log. Same IP address, same timestamps, repeated over months. Silence. Not because they didn't understand, because they did. My mother folded her hands on the table. "You're building a narrative," she said. "I'm documenting one," I replied. Another page. Financial estimates, projected commissions, conservative calculations. "I didn't have access to your actual accounts," I said. "So these are based on available data." Ryan finally leaned forward. "That's speculation." "It's incomplete," I said. "There's a difference." I let that sit for a second. Then I closed the folder halfway. "I'm not here to argue details," I said. "I'm here to set terms." That got their attention. My mother's expression tightened just slightly. Ryan stopped trying to look relaxed. "Terms," he repeated. "Yes." Ethan shifted in his seat, not interrupting, just aligning himself with the moment. I opened the folder again and pulled out a single document. Clean, structured, prepared. "I'm requesting full disclosure of all records related to redirected business originating from my company," I said. "Emails, contracts, financial transactions, and internal communications." Ryan shook his head immediately. "That's not happening." "It is if you want to avoid escalation," Ethan said calmly. Ryan looked at him for the first time. "And you are her counsel," Ethan replied. That changed the room. Not dramatically, just enough. My mother's voice came in softer this time. "Stella, this is unnecessary." "No," I said. "This is overdue. You're turning this into something adversarial." "It already is." She held my gaze, searching for something, maybe hesitation, maybe the version of me that would soften under pressure. It wasn't there. "What happens if we don't agree to this?" she asked. There it was, the real question. I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence do its work. Then I slid the document across the table. "Then this moves forward formally," I said. Ryan didn't pick it up, but he looked at it. My mother did the same. Neither of them asked what formally meant. They knew. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Ryan leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "You're serious," he said. "I am." Another pause, longer this time. Then my mother reached out and picked up the document. She didn't read it right away, just held it. "When did you decide this?" she asked. I thought about that for a second. Not the moment I found the hidden inbox. Not the night I saw the commission structure. Not even when I heard her voice on that recording. I decided when I realized this wasn't about helping me, I said. It was about controlling the outcome. Her expression didn't break, but something behind it shifted. Not guilt, recognition. Ryan stood up first this time, pacing a step before stopping. This isn't going to go the way you think, he said. I'm not guessing anymore, I replied. He looked at me like he wanted to argue. Really argue this time. But he didn't, because the conversation had already moved past that point. My mother finally looked down at the document in her hand, then back at me. We'll review this, she said. It wasn't agreement, but it wasn't refusal either, and right now that was enough. I stood up, closing the folder completely. I'll expect a response within 5 business days, I said. Ethan stood with me. Ryan didn't say anything else. My mother didn't try to stop me. And as I walked out of that house, same hallway, same walls, same air that used to make me feel smaller, I realized something I hadn't expected. I wasn't leaving to escape. I was leaving because I had already taken back what mattered. The rest was just process. They didn't respond on the 5th day. Not in writing, but at 9:12 that morning, Ethan forwarded me an email from Hill Consulting's legal team requesting additional time to review the scope of the request. No denial, no pushback, just delay. Is that good or bad? I asked him over the phone. It means they're taking it seriously, he said, and they're not ready to commit to a position yet, so they're buying time. Yes. I looked at the calendar on my wall the next 2 weeks, blocked with production schedules, tastings, and the first rollout planning meeting with Brooks Hospitality Group. They won't stall forever, Ethan added. Not if they think we're prepared to move forward. I said. And I meant it, because in the days after that meeting, something in me stopped waiting. I finalized the security changes across every system. Accounting, ordering, vendor communication, everything now ran through channels they couldn't touch. I formalized the structure Ethan and I discussed. Registered updates, ownership clarity, liability separation. It wasn't complicated once you understood it. You define what's yours, you document it, you protect access to it, and you stop explaining it to people who've already shown they don't respect it. A week later, Daniel asked me to meet him at one of his properties. Not the bakery, not an office, a hotel. The kind of place where everything is quiet in a controlled way, polished floors, low voices, people moving like they understand the value of discretion. He was already seated when I arrived, a folder in front of him, not unlike the one I'd carried into my parents' house. You look different, he said as I sat down. I feel different, I replied. He nodded once like that confirmed something. I've reviewed your updates, he said. Your structure, your legal position. And it's solid. That word again. Not impressive, not ambitious. Solid. I haven't signed the contract yet, I said. I know. You said it was a test. It was, he replied. And now, he slid the folder toward me. I'm offering you a revision. I opened it. The terms looked familiar at first: volume, commitments, pricing structures, service expectations. But the section Ethan had flagged before exclusivity was different, limited, conditional, not binding me to his network, creating a lane within it. I looked up. This isn't the same contract. No, he said. It's the version you earn when you don't hand over control just to grow faster. I held his gaze for a moment. You changed the terms because I didn't sign. I changed the terms because you understood what signing meant. There was a difference, and I could see it now. This still benefits you, I said. Of course, he replied. I don't do charity. Then why make it easier for me? He leaned back slightly. Not defensive, just direct.
Because long-term partnerships don't work if one side depends on the other for control, he said. They work when both sides bring something stable to the table.
I thought about Ryan's offer. Equity, oversight, access. All words that pointed in one direction. Dependence.
This gives me room to grow outside your network, I said. Yes, and you're okay with that. I'm investing in consistency, he replied. Not exclusivity.
I looked down at the contract again. For the first time since this started, I wasn't scanning for hidden risks. I was evaluating alignment, and it felt different, clear. I'll have Ethan review the revision, I said.
Of course.
He paused, then added, You handled your situation well.
My situation. Your family,
he said. I didn't respond right away. Handling it isn't the same as finishing it, I said. No, he agreed. But most people don't even get that far. I closed the folder. Neither did I said. Until recently. That evening back at the bakery, Ethan confirmed what I already felt.
The revised contract is clean, he said. Balanced. No hidden control mechanisms. So I can sign.
Yes. I sat with that for a moment. Then I signed. Not because it was the biggest opportunity, but because it was the right structure. 2 days later, the response from Hill Consulting finally came. Not an email this time. A formal letter, acknowledging receipt of my request, agreeing to partial disclosure, and requesting a meeting to resolve the matter privately. I read it twice, then forwarded it to Ethan.
They want to settle, he said. Already. They don't want discovery, he replied. If this goes further, we gain access to more than they're offering.
I leaned back in my chair, the letter still open on my screen. What do you think I asked?
I think they've calculated their risk, he said, and they don't like the numbers.
I almost smiled. Not because they were worried, because for the first time, they had to be.
What are my options? We meet,
he said.
We listen.
And we decide what resolution looks like on your terms. My terms. That was new. Not just the words, but the reality behind them. I closed the laptop slowly. The bakery was quiet again, the last trays cooling in the back. Same space. Same work. But nothing about this felt small anymore. Because this time, when the next conversation happened, it wouldn't be about whether I deserved the opportunity. It would be about what it cost them to take it from me. The meeting wasn't at my mother's house this time. It was in a conference room at Ethan's firm. Neutral, documented, controlled. Elaine arrived first dressed the way she always did for anything important, clean lines, quiet authority. Ryan came in a minute later carrying a folder he didn't open right away. They both looked at me differently. Not warmer, not colder. Measured. Ethan sat beside me already reviewing the letter they'd sent. No introductions were necessary. Everyone understood the roles now. My mother spoke first. We're here to resolve this, she said. Not apologize. Resolve. That depends on what resolution looks like, I replied. Ryan finally opened his folder. Inside were documents, financial summaries, transaction logs, contract references. More than I expected. Not everything. But enough to confirm what I already knew. The redirected orders, the commission tiers, the payments flowing through Hill Consulting. Real numbers now. Not estimates. Ethan reviewed them quietly, occasionally marking a page. This aligns with the pattern we identified, he said after a few minutes. My mother nodded. We're not disputing the structure. That was the closest thing to an admission they were willing to make. Ryan leaned forward.
"We're offering a settlement," he said.
"Go on,"
I replied.
"Full reimbursement of any commissions tied to your business," he said, "plus an additional amount to account for missed growth opportunities."
I didn't react.
"Additionally," he continued, "we're willing to formally sever Hill Consulting's involvement in any network connected to your business moving forward."
There it was. The thing that mattered most. Separation.
Ethan glanced at me, not guiding, just checking. And in return, I asked. "A mutual agreement not to pursue further legal action," my mother said.
"Of course."
I looked down at the documents again. The numbers were significant. Enough to cover the damage. Enough to stabilize anything that had been delayed. But this wasn't about recovering money anymore. It was about defining the future. "I want full disclosure," I said. Ryan frowned slightly. "We've provided I want complete records," I repeated. "Not summaries, not selections. Everything tied to redirected business originating from my company." A pause. My mother spoke this time.
"That's not a standard condition."
"Neither was what you did," I replied. Silence. Then Ryan exhaled slower this time. "We can provide that," he said. "And a written acknowledgement," I added, "that those actions were taken without my consent." My mother's expression tightened. Not anger. Something closer to resistance. "That language has implications," she said. "It reflects reality," I replied. Another pause. Longer this time. Ethan didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. Because this wasn't a negotiation about numbers anymore. It was about accountability. My mother looked at Ryan. Ryan looked back. Then she nodded once. "We'll agree to that," she said. Something in the room shifted. Not dramatically, but enough. I closed the folder in front of me. "Then we have a framework," I said. "The paperwork took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of revisions, clarifications, final language. When it was done, the agreement was clean. Full financial restitution, complete disclosure of past actions, formal acknowledgement of unauthorized interference, permanent separation of Hill Consulting from any business channel connected to mine. No shared control, no hidden access, no quiet involvement, just a clear line." A year later, I stood in the kitchen of my second location watching a new hire finish her first batch of pastry under Jasmine's supervision. The rhythm was familiar now. Not chaotic, not fragile, stable. Brooks Hospitality Group was still a major client, but not the only one. I had other contracts now, different networks, my own relationships, built slowly, intentionally, without anyone filtering them before they reached me. My phone buzzed on the counter, a message from my mother. "Hope you're doing well. Would love to talk sometime. No pressure, no assumptions. Just an opening." I looked at it for a moment, then set the phone back down. Not ignoring it. Just not responding right away. Because for the first time, I understood something I hadn't before. Forgiveness isn't a door you reopen. It's a decision about what you carry forward. And boundaries? They don't disappear just because someone asks nicely. Jasmine walked over, wiping her hands on a towel. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Everything's steady." She smiled. "That's a good place to be." It was. Not dramatic, not perfect, but real. And it was mine. The hardest part of being underestimated isn't proving people wrong. It's realizing how long you were willing to accept less than you deserved, especially when it came from your own family. If you've ever been in a position where your work, your effort, or your independence was quietly controlled or dismissed, you know how complicated it feels to push back. Not because you lack strength, but because you're taught that loyalty should come before everything else. But loyalty without respect isn't support, it's control. What I learned is that setting boundaries doesn't mean you're choosing conflict. It means you're choosing clarity. And clarity makes it possible to build something that actually belongs to you without interference, without hidden conditions. Forgiveness can exist alongside distance. You can let go of resentment without restoring access. Those are two different decisions. If any part of this story felt familiar to you, I'd really like to hear your perspective. Where are you watching from and what time is it there? And if you want more stories like this, ones that explore what it really takes to take your life back piece by piece, you're always welcome here. This is a fictional story created for entertainment, education, and reflection.